Hello, and welcome back to Off the Cuff. My name is Jared Crowley. I'm your host. Sitting across from lead pastor at Church of the Harvest, one of my favorite people in the world, David Freck. And if you've never seen Off the Cuff before, basically it's a show that we put on at Church of the Harvest that we really view as like a resource to help you kind of answer some different questions and topics and things that you might not always hear get talked about on a Sunday morning, but might want some more clarity on. And so the way that we do that is we basically take your questions, your comments, your topics that you send in to us, and we prepare them ahead of time without this man knowing anything about it. And then we spin a wheel or shake a jar or whatever kind of fun thing to basically determine what that question is. And then we throw it at him and ask him to talk about it for a little bit, create a discussion, little sermonette, whatever that looks like.
Yeah,
So
fun stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, this is our old school randomizers.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so are you feeling ready?
Yeah, let's do
Okay,
it.
let's do it.
All right, we're going for
Pink. So what we had last time?
No, we had blue last
We had blue? Okay, all right.
So pink question.
Okay.
Whatever a pink question is, that's what we're going for.
Okay, so, all right, I'm actually very interested in this one. So, someone wanted to know basically what, this person might have been an LTI just based on what was talked about the last time you spoke, but so someone wanted to know basically what somewhat of a framework would look like for biblical problem solving.
Well, that's a great question, actually. Biblical problem solving. So I'm assuming that means using biblical principles to solve problems.
Yes, yeah.
So when your values are clear, decisions are easy. Best thing I can say to you.
Sure.
So problem solving starts with a value system. That's where it always starts.
Okay.
So if you know what your values are, then when you do have problems, you assess those problems through the filter of your value system.
Okay.
Now, once again, the value system has to be based on scriptural principles.
Yeah.
Okay? So, things like love, integrity, honesty, truthfulness, faithfulness, whatever those values are, primary values. Then the second thing that has to guide problem solving is truth. I think that most problems are attempted to be solved when you don't even know what the truth of it is. So our first effort has to be to discover the truth of the situation. And that means you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, for sure.
Because sometimes a lot of reasons why we don't solve a problem is because it's easier to deal with the surface of the problem than the root of the problem.
Yeah.
The truth is the root of the problem. So we have to get to the root. And to get to the root, you have to know the truth.
Sure. Yeah.
You know the truth, it'll make you free.
Yeah.
Just that simple.
Yeah.
So first thing, biblical value system. Second thing, find the truth of the situation. Really deal with it in a very honest way.
Yeah.
Once you know the truth of the thing, you have your value system. The third thing that I think has to exist is that you have to have a biblical understanding of what that scenario requires. So every problem is different.
Yeah.
Some of them are based on behaviors, some of them are based on attitudes, some of them are based on circumstances.
Yeah.
And circumstantial problems are one thing, attitude problems are another thing, behavioral problems are another thing.
For sure. Yeah.
So, and sometimes they're intertwined. You have a bad attitude, you make a bad decision, you do the wrong thing, which is a behavior, and then the consequences are you have a circumstantial problem.
Sure. Yeah.
So most problems aren't independent of those outside other influences. Problems are a stew. They're usually not a singular thing.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a stew. It's several things combined that create the real problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So truth is dealing with the root of the problem. If you deal with just the surface, you're dealing with symptoms and not the issue.
For sure. Yeah.
And then problem solving requires discipline. It requires focus. It requires a commitment to solve it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people won't solve a problem because they just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. For sure.
So, once again, those are just some basic principles to solving problems. So
Yeah.
wisdom is the final probably element.
Sure.
And so when I say wisdom, what I'm talking about is not just applied knowledge, because that's how the way it's usually related. Well, I know something, I need to apply it.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't mean it's wise.
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think wisdom is dealing with the thing as God would deal with it. So it's kind of the WWJD thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What would Jesus do?
Right.
And run that filter through that process.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you combine all of those elements,
Yeah.
then you'll find your strategy for problem
Sure.
solving.
Yeah.
I'd like.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I'd like to say that it's always, hey, step 1, 2, step 3, and then
For
you're
sure.
there.
Yeah.
It's more nuanced than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I think if you look at it in that general sense, you can probably find your solutions.
Yeah, which might kind of answer what I was about to ask, because I guess you're saying it's more of like it's more of a process of like learning how to solve those things than it is like going by a specific process.
Right. Well, there's no problem that has a specific process of solution.
Yeah.
I mean, they're always nuanced.
For sure.
There's elements involved. There's things in your control. There's things outside your control.
Yeah.
Again, there's all of those elements, and that's the final piece. Is ultimately for what you can't control, you have to have God's blessing, favor, and grace.
Yeah.
To either deal with it or to navigate through it. One of the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that all of those elements come to bear. So you think about Solomon, the wisest man at the time, the wisest man in the world, and he's presented with this problem where two women are claiming the same child. Right, well, that's my baby. No, that's my baby.
Yeah,
No, that's my baby. No, that's my baby. It's her word against her word,
Right.
and there's nobody that knows what the real answer is,
Yeah.
except for the one woman
Yeah.
that
It's actually her child.
well, no, that actually killed the baby, killed her baby accidentally, and then stole the other woman's baby.
Oh, okay.
She's the only one that really knows
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
There's nobody else in that room that knows anything.
Yeah.
So the wisdom of Solomon was, and this goes to the truth of the matter, right?
Yeah.
That in his reasoning, he said, well, okay, let's just split the baby in half and give a half to each one of them.
Right.
Well, it's barbaric, it seems wrong, but the principle is the true mother would never let that happen.
Right.
She'd rather see that baby go to another person than to see that baby destroyed.
Right.
And so when, the sword was brought and they were going to, and the one woman's, let's do that. And the other woman's, no. Well, he said, okay, that's the mother.
Right.
So it's the application of the truth of the situation, understanding what the proper motive, what the proper process would be, and knowing how to apply to that situation to bring clarity and revelation and solution.
Yeah.
So that's one. I mean, that's an easy one in that sense, but it is a problem that had to be solved, and nobody knew the answer except for that one woman, and she was willing to be a deceptive individual. So.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. Would you say, so when you're talking about, there's one more thing I want to hit, and then we'll probably have to wrap up, but when you're talking about what would Jesus do, and then also like consulting the Bible for like what are the precedents for how someone handled this situation in a correct way, are you like, and I'm sure it's different for you now than it has been in the past, just because you probably know where like a lot of those things are, offhand and stuff. But is it a thing where you're consulting like the epistles and trying to see like these church problems, how were these dealt in the New Testament context? Are you going back to the Old Testament and trying to figure out?
Well, they both work.
Yeah, sure.
Both of them do. I mean, New Testament is going to be the clearest process.
Sure.
Because it's based in New Testament realities. But that doesn't preclude that the Old Testament doesn't have solutions.
Right.
So I would tell you this, when it comes to kind of your biblical search for solutions, look for patterns and principles, not just a specific verse of Scripture.
Yeah, that's good.
So look for patterns and principles. So that's how God teaches us, and that's how God functions, in patterns and principles.
Yeah.
We love to have the one verse that says, yea, thus saith the Lord, do this, this, and this, and you'll have this solution.
Yeah.
But it's usually patterns and principles.
Yeah.
If you'll do this, I'll do this.
Right.
If you'll not do this, this is what will happen. So there's always these patterns and principles that the Bible is constantly showing us.
Yeah.
That is what I would call the way of life.
Sure.
Okay? And look for that.
Yeah.
Look for that in these statements of Jesus, in these statements of Paul, in these statements of Peter or John, or even some of the Old Testament, people, the writers.
Right.
Proverbs is a great place to find
For
just
sure.
some practical solutions,
Yeah.
and that's bite-sized solutions
Yeah.
to more complex problems. So the Psalms, some of the stories of the Old Testament, this is a real problem. How did they find a solution?
Yeah, right.
And sometimes we only see this deep, dynamic, spiritual solution, but
Yeah.
a lot of times God's just showing them a simple
It's a great point.
principle
Yep.
that if you'll apply it, you'll find the solution.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah.
I think that's probably the only other thing I would share with that. Sometimes there's clear statements in the scripture, and sometimes there isn't.
Yeah, right, right.
What does God say about money? If you got a money problem, what does the Bible say about money?
Yeah, right.
And the proper use of money.
Yep, yep.
The Bible says, "Owe no man anything." Well, I'm in debt. Well, there's your problem.
Yeah, sure.
All right, how do I get out of debt? Well, here's how you. Here's some principles.
Yeah.
Save. Here's some principles. Pay off your debt. Do the rolling snowball. Use these patterns for how they work.
Yeah.
Go to work. Invest. And these are all biblical principles.
Right, right. Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's super practical, super helpful. I think you make a great point about how in your head you can get and how many things you'll consult before you start consulting the Bible and you start consulting God about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many resources that are at your disposal, even biblical resources. I mean, you can go online and you can be able to scriptural solutions too.
Right.
And you'll get 3 or 4 hundred people or
Right.
Bible teachers or whatever that, hey, if you're dealing with this, here's some biblical answers.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can get into that, and it can be a kickstart for how you and you might actually find the one thing that, oh wow, this is my solution.
Yeah.
So it's available to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Make sure the source is good.
Yeah.
but it's available. It's readily available.
For sure.
We don't lack for the opportunity to access knowledge.
Yeah, definitely.
Our problem is how do we apply it?
Yeah.
And how do we discover it?
Yeah.
That's really our
Yeah,
issue.
and discernment too. Like what is,
sure.
like you said, checking the sources and things like that. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Appreciate you.
You bet.
Another one hit out of the park. More bars on bars. All right, we appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much for watching. Comments, topics, feedback, all that stuff is super valuable to us. So feel free to send it in, and we'll see you next week.
All right, bye-bye.